There are moments in history when the world does not erupt immediately. There is no opening blast, no images of missiles tearing through the sky on live television. There is only something far more dangerous than all of that: an unnaturally prolonged silence. And the Middle East, right now, is sinking deep into exactly that kind of silence. For more than 45 years since the 1979 Islamic Revolution, Iran has not survived because of overwhelming military strength, nor because of a resilient economy. This regime has survived on a single core assumption: that violence could be controlled, that society could be bent through fear, and that the outside world, until the very last moment, would always choose stability over confrontation. That assumption was once correct. Today, it is collapsing from within, in the most dangerous way possible. What is unfolding on the streets of Iran can no longer be described as protests by any serious political definition. When death tolls can no longer be accurately counted. When official figures become nothing more than a thin shell masking reality on the ground. When independent sources, eyewitnesses, leaked data, and satellite imagery all point in the same direction. Casualties have crossed a threshold beyond reversal. This is not the maintenance of order. It is the self-destruction mechanism of a regime losing control. Modern political history shows that every authoritarian collapse follows the same cycle, regardless of context. First comes the loss of information control, then the loss of control over coercive forces, and finally, the loss of the ability to regulate escalation with the outside world. Iran is now experiencing all three phases simultaneously. Tehran's decision to cut the internet, activate nationwide kill switches, hunt satellite users, conduct house-to-house raids, and isolate the country from global information flows is not a display of strength. It is a symptom of strategic panic. In the 20th century, regimes could bury massacres behind information darkness. In the 21st century, that is nearly impossible. A single smartphone in a narrow Tehran alley today carries the political weight of an intelligence analysis center 3 decades ago. And that shift is now suffocating Tehran. Washington understands this better than any other capital. When the United States orders its citizens to leave Iran immediately by any means necessary, this is not routine diplomacy. It is a strategic signal. Recent history shows that such warnings only appear when military contingencies have moved off the drawing board and into operational readiness. Iran has seen this before, and it understands exactly what it means. From the White House's perspective, the question is no longer whether to intervene. The real question is how to intervene without disrupting the regime's ongoing internal collapse. This creates an extraordinarily dangerous strategic paradox. A strike that is too large, too early, could hand Tehran the final gift it needs: an external enemy capable of reunifying society under nationalist banners. A strike that is too late, too limited, allows the repression apparatus to complete its work in darkness. There is only a narrow corridor between these extremes, and that corridor is governed by timing, not emotion. But one point must be made clearly: delay does not equal hesitation. Modern war does not begin with explosions. It begins with logistics, and logistics are moving. When U.S. aerial refueling aircraft maintain continuous presence over the Persian Gulf, this is not training. Tankers do not orbit for hours as a precaution. They orbit because a strike package will soon require fuel. When strategic bomber platforms are held at extended readiness, this is not posturing. It is a silent countdown. These signals are not meant for the public. They are meant for those fluent in the language of modern warfare. At the same time, Israel has adjusted its entire security posture. For Tel Aviv, every escalation scenario with Iran ends the same way: missiles flying toward Israel. Not if, when. Israel's multi-layered air defense systems were not activated out of panic. They were activated out of strategic memory. Israel has seen Iran's missile doctrine in practice. and it understands that a regime backed into a corner does not behave rationally. Yet the greatest threat to Tehran is not coming from the sky. It is coming from inside the barracks. No regime dependent on ideologically loyal paramilitary forces escapes one fear: hesitation within the regular army. When soldiers hesitate, when orders are no longer executed automatically, when command chains develop abnormal silences, that is the moment when power is no longer transmitted through rank but through fear. And fear is never sustainable. Modern Iranian history is riddled with such fractures. The latent tension between the regular armed forces and revolutionary formations has never fully disappeared. As external pressure increases, as internal pressure exceeds tolerance thresholds, those fractures begin to widen, and no bunker is deep enough to hide that reality. If real regime power is measured by control over armed forces, then the most dangerous moment is not when bombs fall, but when soldiers fall silent. Not silent in obedience, silent in doubt. In every modern Middle Eastern regime collapse, the decisive moment has never come from an external strike. It has come from a fracture inside the uniform. Iran is moving rapidly toward that boundary. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps was built to serve ideology, not the state. The regular army was trained to defend territory, not clerics. These structures can coexist under low pressure. Under extreme pressure, they collide. When a soldier is ordered to fire on unarmed crowds, when an officer must choose between orders and honor, when command chains stretch under fear and uncertainty, power is no longer guaranteed by slogans. It is sustained or lost by belief. Within this context, the reemergence of exiled opposition figures in international media is not coincidence. It signals that external power centers are preparing succession scenarios, not to govern Iran, not to impose a new order, but to avoid something far more dangerous: an uncontrolled power vacuum. In strategic terms, the most frightening outcome is not a hostile regime. It is a collapsed state that still possesses weapons stockpiles. This is the calculation Washington is handling with extreme caution. Every military signal now being transmitted is aimed not at the public, but at internal power blocks within Iran. The message is unambiguous. Anyone continuing to stand with the repression apparatus is gambling with their own future. And in military politics, such wagers are rarely paid out. Simultaneously, Iran's regional influence network is unraveling through domino effects. Yemen was the first to feel the shift. Armed groups dependent on funding and components from Tehran are entering shortages. No money, no spare parts, no strategic guidance. A system designed to project regional pressure is now folding inward in chaos. Saudi Arabia understands this moment clearly and is not missing it. This is not geopolitical opportunism. It is the cold calculation of a state that has waited years for this opening. In Lebanon, signs of weakness are no longer concealed. Financial flows disrupted. Logistics fractured. Positions once considered strategic forward posts are being abandoned. A forward defense doctrine only survives while the center holds. When the center shakes, the outer structure collapses under gravity. Syria, meanwhile, has fallen into an abnormal silence. Not neutrality. Fear of being pulled into a vortex with no exit. And then comes the question Tehran avoids answering: where are Russia and China? The strategic answer is brutally cold. Russia is trapped in a prolonged war of attrition, where every air defense system and logistics unit must be preserved for itself. Moscow lacks both capacity and incentive to rescue a sinking ally. China is different. It has capability, but it lacks motive. An economy facing internal strain cannot trade access to the world's largest markets to save a regime entering terminal decline. In power politics, silence is often the clearest answer, and Tehran is hearing that silence more clearly by the day. This strategic isolation is now reflected directly in Iran's economy. Currency collapse accelerates. Supply chains fragment. Social trust erodes beyond repair. A state can survive poverty. It cannot survive total loss of trust. Meanwhile, the information war once believed controllable by Tehran is slipping beyond reach. Internet shutdowns are no longer sufficient. Device seizures no longer work. Satellite technology, live transmission, and decentralized information flows have shattered old censorship doctrines. A single image, a single video from a narrow Tehran alley can cross half the globe in seconds. For 20th century regimes, this is a nightmare. For 21st century strategists, it is a new lever of power. In this environment, US military preparations are no longer mere deterrents. They are directional signals, not aimed at populations, but at decision makers weighing final choices. This strategy has been applied before, not to destroy a country, but to remove the malignant core within a system. No occupation, no forced reconstruction, just decapitation and allow the system to self-adjust. This is why any potential strikes, if they occur, will not target civilian infrastructure. They will target command centers, control nodes, the neural hubs sustaining repression. And this is why Tehran is more afraid now than at any previous moment. Because it understands, once orders stop flowing from the center, once fear can no longer be coordinated, the regime dissolves faster than under invasion. The paradox is stark. While bombs have not yet fallen, war is already underway. It is happening inside barracks, inside unanswered phone calls, inside closed-door meetings where no one is certain which side they are on. This is the most dangerous phase of any crisis. No explosions. But every decision carries historical weight. Tomorrow may bring no missiles. There may be no burning images on television, or the world may wake to a Middle East power map already shifted, not by a great battle, but by a decision made at the right moment. This is not a moment for emotion. It is a moment of strategic mathematics. And in that mathematics, the margin for error is zero. What is unfolding is not quite war, but it is no longer peace. It is the gray zone where history is often rewritten by those who understand that waiting can itself be an action. And with every passing second, we move closer to the moment when the world is forced to call things by their proper name. History does not wait for consensus. It waits for a signal, and that signal may already be in the sky.